I thought you will take an off today. So nice to see you.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
So if you see the left part of the periodic table, these elements are known as S block elements and they are all metals. Now we come to the D block and there is hydrogen at the top. Hydrogen is kept separately and we'll see why. But these elements which are shown in peach color, they are all also metals. These are known as transition elements. Okay. Now we come to the right part of the periodic table. This is nothing but the P block. So in P block, we have many colors. So this blue part that you see here is again for the metals. And then we see an orange part, silicon, germanium, arsenic, antimony, tellurium and polonium and astatine. These elements are all known as metalloids. You will see what these are. And then we move to the rightmost part, which is in pink. So these are all the noble gases: helium, neon, argon, krypton, xenon, radon. These are all the noble gases. And then we see something in green. Something is green in color. These are all the non-metals. So what do we notice here? The leftmost part, all of this plus this blue part, these are all the metals in the periodic table. Then the things which are in green and pink, these are the non-metals. And there are a few things which are in orange, which are placed in between the metals and the non-metals. They are known as metalloids. And you have to remember the names of these metalloids for your exam. Okay. So now let us see what actually metals are. So what are metals? Metals are those elements which have a tendency to donate electrons. Okay. What are metals? Metals are elements which have a tendency to donate electrons. Let me give you an example. So we know that all the elements want to be like noble gases. All the elements want to become like noble gases because noble gases are very, very peaceful. Everyone wants to be like them. So for that, what do? Let's see an example of helium. Helium is a noble gas. So its configuration is 2. It has 2 electrons in the outermost shell. And the next noble gas is neon. Neon's configuration is 2, 8. So both of their outermost shells are fully complete. Okay. Now, if I take an example of an element like lithium. So lithium is atomic number 3. So what is its configuration? It is 2, 1. But this lithium, it wants to be very peaceful. It wants to be exactly like helium or neon. So what options does it have? If it loses one electron, it will become like helium. And if it gains 7 electrons, it will become like neon. What do you think? What is easy for it? What will lithium do?
Lose one electron.
Yeah, that is easy for it. So lithium is going to lose this one electron. And when lithium loses one electron, what does it become? So lithium is losing one electron. So minus one electron, it will give me some ion. What will it be? It will become positively charged. Is that correct? Whenever an element loses electrons, it becomes positively charged. And positively charged ions are known as cations. So metals are elements which have a tendency to donate electrons to form cations. Is this definition of metals clear? They will donate electrons to form cations. So how many electrons it will donate depends on its configuration. So if I take the example of say magnesium, magnesium's configuration is 2, 8, 2. So again, it can do two things. It can either lose 2 electrons or it can gain 6 electrons. So losing 2 electrons is easy. That is why magnesium will lose 2 electrons. So Mg minus 2 electrons will give me Mg2 plus. Again, it formed a cation. Therefore, it is a metal. So let me take you back to the periodic table again and mark all the metals. These are all metals. All of these are also metals. And whatever we see here in blue, this blue part is also the metals part. So these are all the metals in the periodic table. They will donate electrons and they will form cations. Now, we want to define what are nonmetals. So nonmetals will do the opposite. Non-metals also want to become like noble gases. They want to be very peaceful. So for that, non-metals, what they will do is they will accept electrons. So non-metals are elements which accept electrons. And whenever an element accepts electrons, what does it form? It gets a negative charge, so it becomes an anion. So non-metals are elements that gain electrons to form anions. To form anions. So here, let me give you an example of a non-metal. So I'll take the example of the most non-metallic element, which is fluorine. Fluorine is the most non-metallic element in the periodic table. So this fluorine, its configuration is 2, 7. So if it wants to become stable, like a noble gas, it will gain one electron. So when fluorine gains one electron, it becomes fluoride ion, F minus. That is why fluorine is a non-metal. Or another example is sulfur. So sulfur's configuration is 2, 8, 6. If it gains 2 electrons, it will become like argon, like a noble gas. So that is what it will do. Sulfur gains 2 electrons to become sulfide ion. So sulfur also is going to be a non-metal. So here's a question for you all. Asked in one of the board exams. So it's giving me 4 options. Non-metals are good. Reducing agent, oxidizing agent, neutralizing agent, or none of the above. So I'll give you a hint. The last option is wrong. It is one of these three. So yeah, let's see who comes up with the right answer. And you also have to give me a reason. Non-metals, again, let me take the example of fluorine. It gains an electron and it becomes F minus. So what happens to the charge on fluorine? Earlier, it was zero charge because an atom is electrically neutral. So earlier, fluorine had zero charge on it. But after this transfer of electrons, now it has a -1 charge on it. So what has happened? The charge on fluorine has decreased. Is that correct? The charge on fluorine has decreased. So what is this? Oxidation or reduction?
Have reduction.
Yeah, very good, because oxidation number is decreasing. So this is reduction. That means that fluorine has a tendency to get reduced. And if you go back to the first chapter, there we saw that a substance that gets reduced is the oxidizing agent. Do you remember that? A substance that gets reduced. So by itself it is getting reduced. That means that it is going to be the oxidizing agent. So a substance that gets reduced is the oxidizing agent. So that means that when this substance is getting reduced, in that process, it oxidizes the other substance. So by itself, it is reducing, but it is oxidizing the other substance. So a substance that gets reduced is the oxidizing agent. So here the correct answer is option B. Very good, Somil. Very good, Arushi, Nandana. So non-metals are good oxidizing agents, and for metals we can say that they are good reducing agents. So metals are good reducing agents. So I hope this is clear now. Okay. Next we come to what are metalloids. These are just intermediate between metals and non-metals. We saw no in the periodic table also they were sandwiched in between the metals and the non-metals. So that is because these are those elements that have properties intermediate between metals and non-metals. They are not entirely metallic. They are not entirely non-metallic. So metalloids are elements whose properties are intermediate. Intermediate means somewhere in between. So intermediate between metals and non-metals. And you saw those examples, no? They were all shown in orange in the periodic table. So what were those? Let's remember, try to remember. We had silicon, we had germanium, we had arsenic, we had antimony, we had bismuth and tellurium and oh, astatine. These are the various metalloids, and you can see that here in the periodic table. These are the elements which have been shown in orange. Silicon, germanium, arsenic, antimony, tellurium, polonium and astatine. So you have to remember these names, a frequent exam question. Okay, we have another question now. So, you know, in CBSE board, they have started multiple choice questions. So, this type of questions are asked in that first part for 1 mark. Okay, I'm waiting for your answers here. A non-metal A is an important constituent of our food and forms two oxides, B and C. B is toxic, whereas C causes global warming. So, Anupam is saying that option
Option
C.
C.
Even Vatsal is saying option C. Anyone else? Nandana is also saying C. So I guess this is clear. Carbon monoxide is a poisonous gas, and carbon dioxide is a gas which causes global warming. And yeah, the non-metal A is carbon. We know, right? We are all made up of different organic compounds. We are made up of carbon molecules. So yeah, here all of you are right, and option C is the correct option. We'll talk about some of the physical properties of metals and non-metals. First of all, what do we mean by physical properties? There are two types of properties, no? Physical and chemical. So what do we mean when we say physical properties? So these are the properties to decide which there is no formation of a new substance. When we decide a substance's physical properties, in that process, no new substances are formed. For example, we can talk about the state of that substance, whether that substance is solid, liquid, or gas. Or second point is we can talk about how it looks, what it looks like. So it can either have a shiny finish or it will not have any luster. So that is another physical property. Then third physical property would be conduction of heat and electricity. Conduction of heat and electricity. So some substances are good conductors of heat and electricity. Some of them are bad conductors. Then fourth example would be the melting and boiling point. So what is melting point? The temperature at which a substance turns from solid to liquid. So that is known as melting point. Or we have boiling point. Boiling point is what? The temperature at which a liquid changes into vapor. So that is boiling point. Fifth point would be the sonority. What is sonority? Does anyone know what
Met-
sonority is?
Ma'am, metals make a ringing sound.
Yeah, metals make a ringing sound. So they are sonorous. So sonority is the property by which if that substance is hit by another hard substance, it produces a tinkling, uh, clinking sound. Yeah. Then the next point would be its density. What is density? Density is the mass per unit volume. And apart from density, we can also have, what am I left with? Okay, two very important properties. One is ductility. What is ductility?
Metals can be drawn into thin wires.
Yeah, without breaking. So that is ductility. And eighth is malleability. Malleability is that the ability of a substance by which if we beat it with a hammer, we can make it into a very thin sheet. So that is known as malleability. And I hope I didn't miss out on any. Oh, I left one. So one of the properties is hardness. Hardness is what we know what hardness is. So we'll see these properties one by one. First of all, state. It can be either solid or it can be liquid or it can be gas. So when we talk about metals, metals are usually solids in state. So they are usually solids. But can you name any metal which is not a solid at room temperature?
Mercury,
Yeah, very good. And do you have another
Uranium,
example? Cesium.
Clemens,
I couldn't understand. One is mercury, that's correct. So one of the metals which is liquid at room temperature is mercury, Hg. We know, right? In thermometers we use mercury. So that is liquid. So mercury is liquid at room temperature. Apart from mercury, we also have another metal which is not exactly liquid at room temperature, but if the temperature increases even slightly, or even if you touch that metal, it becomes a liquid. It has a very low melting point, and that metal is gallium, Ga. Gallium also, if the temperature is slightly higher, it is liquid at room temperature. So these are the two exceptions here. Now, next we'll talk about non-metals. So for non-metals, we do not have any particular rule. For non-metals, we have either solids or liquids or gases. It can be either of the three. However, in this case, gases is the most common one because almost 11 non-metals in the periodic table are in gas form. So gaseous state is the most common state for non-metals, but even solids and solids also is a common state. But if we talk about liquids, there is one non-metal which is liquid at room temperature. And what is it?
Bromium.
Not bromium, it is bromine.
Bromine. Sorry, ma'am.
Yeah, bromine is a non-metal which is liquid at room temperature. So you have to learn all of these. And I'll launch a poll in which I've asked all of these questions. So be careful. These are asked in the exam, all these exceptions. Now, next is luster. What is luster? Luster is the shiny finish. Shiny finish on the surface of different substances. So if we talk about metals, do you see any metal around you? Yeah, I see the doorknob which looks very metallic. I'm sure you all must have seen many metals like iron. We see it in day-to-day life, right? So whenever we see metals, they usually have a very shiny finish. So metals are usually lustrous. But non-metals have a dull appearance. First of all, non-metals are mostly gases. So there is no chance of them having luster or not. So non-metals are dull in appearance. So they do not have that characteristic luster. They are dull in appearance. And there are a few exceptions again. So if we talk about metals, an exception is lead. Lead has a dull finish. It has a dull finish. It doesn't have the luster that other metals have. And if we talk about non-metals, non-metals usually do not have any luster. But then there are two metals which are lustrous. So here the exceptions are, first is iodine. Okay, iodine exists in solid state. So this iodine, it is a shiny non-metal. It is a shiny non-metal. And apart from iodine, we have another substance. Have you heard of graphite? Graphite is what are
Yes,
pencil
ma'am.
leads. Yeah, the leads in the pencil, they are actually made of graphite. But then why are they called lead if they are made of graphite? Why do we call it lead and not graphite? Does anyone know that? If it's made of graphite, why are we calling it lead?
It's not pure graphite.
But it definitely doesn't have lead in it. Lead is poisonous for us. So I don't know. If you can find the reason, please tell me in the next class. English is a strange language. So graphite is not a non-metal. It is actually an allotrope of carbon. Graphite is just pure carbon, but carbon can exist in very different forms. One of them is graphite. So graphite is an allotrope of carbon, and we know that carbon is a non-metal. So this graphite, which is an allotrope of carbon, we'll see what an allotrope is when we study organic chemistry. It is also shiny. It also has a shiny finish. Now we talk about hardness. So metals, they are usually hard. They are usually very hard. And non-metals are not that hard. They are a bit on the softer side. They are not very hard. But again, we know there are going to be a few exceptions, right? So there are a few metals which are very soft. So those are going to be the exceptions. So for us, the exception is lithium, sodium and potassium. All of them were on the leftmost part of the periodic table. And they are so soft that we can actually cut them with a knife. So lithium, sodium and potassium can be cut with a knife. So this is a very common exam question. Can be cut with a knife. They are very, very soft. Similarly, there will be a few non-metals which are very hard, right? So here also there is going to be some exception. And like Nandana mentioned, we have diamond. Diamond is so hard, it is almost impossible to break, right? So diamond is one of the hardest substances known to man. One of the hardest substances that we know of. So Rishabh has written something. We have noses that run and feet that smell. Got that from NCERT book. Okay, I don't know what that means. Now, let's talk about melting and boiling point. So, melting point was the temperature at which solid changes into liquid. Where do I write? Okay, I'll write here. Solid changes into liquid. So, that temperature is known as melting point. Boiling point is what? Liquid changes into vapor or gas phase. So, metals usually they have a very high melting point. Metals have a high melting point and boiling point. So it is not very easy to melt a metal. Okay. And non-metals have low melting point and boiling point. And yeah, again, we have a few exceptions. So in the case of metals, there are a few metals which have very, very low melting point. For example, we have gallium. Gallium, even if we touch it, it has such a low melting point that it changes into liquid. Similarly, we also have cesium. Cesium also, when we touch it, it instantly changes into liquid because it has a very low melting point. So we have gallium. Then those, there were metals that we could cut with a knife like lithium, sodium, potassium and cesium. All of them have very low melting point. So low that if we touch them, they melt. And for non-metals, there are a few non-metals which have a high melting point and boiling point. So here the exception is carbon. Carbon's melting point and boiling point are not very low. Okay. And we have two more examples. We have boron and silicon. Silicon is actually a metalloid, but for our case, for now, let's consider it as a non-metal. It has more of a non-metallic nature than metallic nature. So these are the three non-metals that have a high melting point. High melting point. Okay. Now let's talk about density. So metals are usually very dense, right? If you take an iron rod, don't you think it's very, very dense? So metals, okay, what is density first of all? Mass upon volume, mass per unit volume. And metals have high density. They have high density. But non-metals have low densities. And here again, the exceptions are sodium, potassium, lithium. They had such low density that we could cut them with a knife, right? So here the exceptions are lithium, sodium, potassium. They have very low density. And again, if we talk about non-metals, then here the exceptions are diamond. Diamond has an exceptionally high density. So diamond is going to be an exception. Okay. And apart from diamond, we also have iodine. Iodine is one of the non-metals which is solid in state, and iodine's density is higher than many other metals. Okay, so iodine is also considered to be a dense non-metal. Okay. Now, ductility. So let me write the definition first. It is the ability of an element, the ability of an element to be drawn into thin wires, to be drawn into thin wires, and the condition is that they should not break. So this should be done without breaking. So this property is known as ductility. And we know that metals are very ductile. They can easily be drawn into wires. And here a fun fact is that gold is the most ductile metal. Most ductile metal. Okay. Gold is highly ductile. It is so ductile. If you take even 1 gram of gold, 1 gram is very less, right? Even if you take 1 gram of gold, that can be drawn into wire which is almost 2 to 3 kilometers long. So that's a lot. So Somil is saying, let's make wires. Somil, do you have enough gold? Can you lend me some gold, please? So gold is the most ductile metal, and same for silver as well. But gold is the maximum ductility. But there are a few exceptions. What are those exceptions? First is mercury. Mercury is liquid. How can you make wires out of it? So mercury is an exception. Another exception here is gallium. It has a very low melting point. You touch it and it melts. So again, you cannot draw it into wires. And there is an exception here that you must remember. It is zinc. So zinc is one metal which is not ductile. They are not ductile. And then non-metals. They are not ductile. They are not ductile. So do you think there are any exceptions here? Do you know of a non-metal which is very ductile? Have you heard about carbon nanotubes? So a lot of research is going on these days about carbon nanotubes. No, Somil, copper again is a metal. Gold, silver, copper, all of these are metals. You remember they were there in reactivity series. So they are all metals. So here one exception is carbon. Carbon has high ductility. In most allotropes. So carbon has so many different forms, no? And all those forms have different properties. But mostly carbon has high ductility. And for example, I'll write here, it is used to make carbon nanotubes. Okay. So we are slowly reaching the end part of this exceptions and all. Now, what is malleability? The ability of an element, the ability of an element to be beaten into thin sheets. To be beaten into thin sheets. So do not ignore these definitions. Even these are asked sometimes. Into thin sheets. So what do you think? Are metals malleable? Yeah, metals are very malleable. And again, we have examples. The most malleable metals are gold and silver. So gold and silver are highly malleable. Highly malleable. But again, you know there are going to be exceptions. So what are the exceptions? Again, mercury is a liquid. You cannot beat it into thin sheets. And even zinc is not malleable. So Somil is saying aluminium. Yeah, even aluminium is very malleable, Somil. So that is another example. Gold, silver, aluminium, all of these are malleable. Even copper. Copper also is highly malleable, but most malleable elements are gold and silver. Okay, and non-metals are not malleable. They cannot be beaten into sheets. Fine, they are not malleable. Luckily, we don't have any exceptions here. Okay, we'll do an experiment now. Let's see what this experiment is. Okay, so in this experiment, you have to tell me what the result is going to be. So pay attention. So here we have taken an iron stand. Okay. In that stand, here I have placed a metal rod. This here is a metallic rod. And at the end of this metallic rod, I have placed a nail and I have stuck it with some wax. So what have I done? I took some wax and I connected this pin here with that wax. So this pin is connected to this metallic rod with some wax. Now I'm going to do an experiment. I am going to take a Bunsen burner and start heating this metallic rod. So I'm heating this metallic rod. Okay, and I did it for 10 minutes. What do you think is going to happen?
The pin will fall.
Yeah, Vatsal, the pin will fall. But why is that happening?
because the wax melts.
Yeah, because the wax melts. So why is the wax melting?
Because the metal rod gets heated up.
Okay, but I'm heating at this point, right? How?
Ma'am, the entire thing heats up
Yeah,
when
so why? Why is that happening? What is that phenomena known as? Yeah,
Because
the
metals conduct heat.
nah, this
Conduction of heat.
good, good. So what is happening? This metal rod is a good conductor of heat. That is why we supply heat here, but even this end gets heated up and this pin which is attached with the help of some wax, that pin falls down because the wax melts. So what does this experiment proves? This experiment proves that metals are good conductors of heat. Good conductors of heat. Okay, then one point is clear now. Now, what do you think should be the property of a cooking vessel? You have so many vessels at home, right? What do you think? What substances are they made of and what is the reason for that? How do we choose a material for making a cooking vessel?
Ma'am, they are actually made up of aluminium.
Okay, some of them are made of aluminium, but what is the reason?
Because we have conduct heat.
Okay, first thing
It,
is,
it is a good conductor of heat.
okay, that can be one point, that a cooking vessel should be made of a material which is a good conductor of heat. Should be made of a material which is a good conductor of heat. But what do you think? Are there any other properties that we need? Apart from this property, what other important properties are there?
That we should have a high.
High what?
Ma'am, it should have a high melting point.
Yeah, very
Ma'am,
good. Very good.
non-oxidizing.
It should be non-oxidizing. So let me write them one by one. First, second point is that it should have a high melting point. Otherwise, we'll start cooking and there our vessel will start melting, right? So it should have a high melting point. Should have a high melting point. What was the third point? It should not oxidize. That means that it should not get burned. It should not catch fire. So it should not oxidize
The
on
metal
heating.
should not corrode or get rust.
Yeah, that is another thing. But we have different remedies for corrosion. We can anodize it, we can galvanize it. We have different methods to take care of corrosion. So I'm not writing that here. We have stainless steel, right? Stainless steel also has iron in it, but it doesn't rust because we make it into an alloy. Anything else? Any other thing? So Somil is saying, please consider my point as well. It should be non-stick. So no, Somil, that is not correct. Non-stick vessels are made by putting a coating of Teflon on them. So Teflon is, okay, I won't write. Teflon is CF2 double bond CF2. It has nothing to do with the material of the vessel. It's just a coating on the vessel. Anything else? Anything that you can think of? So according to me, one more thing is very important. It should be easily molded into different shapes, right? It should be very workable. So it should be easy to mold.
Easily malleable.
Yeah, it should not be malleable, because if it is malleable, it will keep changing shape. We'll be washing the vessel and it will suddenly, a spoon will become a fork. So we don't want that. So I'll just write that it should be easy to work with, or to shape it into different things. To shape it. Okay. So this doesn't mean malleability. Malleability is the property to be beaten into sheets. So these are some of the properties that a cooking vessel should have. So at our homes, usually the cooking vessels are made up of, some of you said aluminium. Then there are some vessels which are of copper. Okay.
Stainless steel.
Yeah, we have stainless steel. Stainless steel is nothing but an alloy.
Alloy.
Yeah, it is an alloy of iron, chromium, manganese, nickel. We mix all of these to make stainless steel. Fine. Now we'll do one more experiment. So here we have a battery. This is a battery. Okay. This is a bulb here. We have a switch and we have these two plugs, plug A and plug B. Okay. I'll do one thing. I'll take a piece of copper. I'll take a copper rod and I'll just place it in between. Okay. I'll take a copper rod and I'll place it in these two plugs. I'll plug it from both sides. And then I'll turn on the switch. Switch is turned on. What do you think is going to happen?
Bulb
The
will glow.
bulb will glow.
Yeah, the bulb will glow. So why is that happening?
Because
It is a good conductor of electricity.
Yeah, it is a
because
good
metals
conductor.
conduct electricity.
Yeah. But now, what if instead of copper, I place a graphite rod here?
Graphite also conducts electricity. Bulb is
Yeah. So although
because
graphite
it
is
is
a,
not attached to four atoms.
yeah. So although graphite is a non-metal, it also can conduct electricity. But suppose I place an iodine rod here, that is not going to conduct electricity and bulb will not glow. So from this experiment, we can test which of the substances are conductors of electricity and which of them are not conductors of electricity. So I took this experiment from NCRT. And here we have a circuit diagram. I took this from Walter's slides, if you remember. So here, this wire, which is red in color, this is actually made up of either aluminium or copper. So both of these are metals. That is why they can easily conduct electricity and the bulb glows. So this means that metals are good conductors of electricity. They are also good conductors of heat because that wax melted, you remember? So let's write here, metals are good conductors of both heat and electricity. And non-metals are poor conductors. They cannot conduct electricity. And the exception is just graphite. Okay. So let me give you some example. Of course, mostly all the metals are good conductors. But then if we talk about silver and copper are the best conductors. They are the best conductors, both heat and electricity. Okay. Silver and copper are the best conductors. And then, of course, we are going to have some exceptions. So there are a few metals which will be poor conductors of heat and electricity. So these examples are, yes, okay. If you want to speak anything, just unmute and you can ask any question that you have, or if you have anything to tell me. So there is lead or mercury. or W. Do you know which element has the symbol W? It was there in physics, electricity. Bulb. What is this element?
Tungsten.
Tungsten.
Yeah, it is tungsten. So tungsten, the symbol is W. It is used to make filaments of bulbs, right? Because it has a high melting point. So these are exceptions. So all three of them are metals, but they are poor conductors. They are poor conductors. And similarly, for non-metal, we had only one exception, which is graphite. So graphite is not a non-metal. Graphite is actually made up of carbon. Graphite is a good conductor of electricity, not of heat, only of electricity. So this is an exception. Okay. So I hope you understood all of this. This was not any rocket science. Rishabh is asking, how does zinc prevent rusting? So Rishabh, I'll come back to that point. I'll talk about corrosion. Zinc doesn't prevent from rusting, it prevents from corrosion in general. So for that, when I teach this in the next class, I'll talk about it. Zinc forms a protective coating of zinc oxide. So we'll talk about it. So here's a question. Why are electric wires coated with plastic or rubber like material? Have you seen wires are always, they have some
They're
sort of a
insulators.
coating. Yeah, Satvik is saying that they are insulators. So why do we
Don't
need
conduct
those?
us so that we don't catch electric.
Yeah, so that we don't get a shock. So the reason is that plastic or rubber are poor conductors of electricity. So because of that, what will happen? The coating will prevent us from shock. So the coating prevents us from electric shock. That is why wires are always coated with some insulating material. Okay. So let's move on to the next part. Yeah, why are school bells made of metals? Do you have this kind of bell at your school? We had. And sometimes Supriya and I, we used to go and ring the bell. So why do you think school bells are made of metals?
Because metals are sonorous.
Because metals are sonorous. So when you hit them with another hard substance, it is going to produce a sound, the sound of freedom at the end of the day. So because metals are sonorous. There must be a few classes at school, no, where you just wait for the bell to ring and the class to get over because metals are sonorous. Some of you must be wishing, I hope they had a bell here also, which I could just ring and the class would end. Okay, because metals are sonorous. So metals, we know that they are sonorous and non-metals are not sonorous. So they do not produce a very sharp sound when they are hit by another hard material. Okay. So yeah, these are some of the properties of physical properties of metals and non-metals. And now let's talk about some chemical properties of metals. So in chemical properties, we'll be focusing on 5 points. So just keep in mind that physical properties we saw for both metals and non-metals, but chemical properties, we'll be focusing on the metals. So here, some of the things that we'll be talking about is, first of all, burning of metal. Burning of metal in air. Second is, we'll see the reaction of metal with another metal salt solution. We have seen this when we were talking about displacement reaction, but here we'll be seeing all that again. So we are going to take a metal and we are going to react it with another salt solution. Third is we'll see the reaction of metal with some water. Okay. Fourth is reaction of metal with an acid, different acids. And fifth is we are going to react metals with another non-metal. Okay. So these are some of the chemical properties of metals that we have to talk about. Where is the poll? Okay. So now I'm going to launch a poll. And your time starts now. Satvik is asking what was Buckminster fullerene in the poll. So that is also an allotrope of carbon, Satvik. When we see organic compounds, we'll be drawing the structure of Buckminster fullerene. It looks like a football. It has various rings of carbon in it, pentagons and hexagons. So its name is Buckminster fullerene. It is an allotrope of carbon. No, it's not something out of a sci-fi movie. Okay, so I'm going to end the poll now and share the results. So first, which metal is a liquid at room temperature? So very good, it's mercury. Almost all of you gave the right answer. One person said gold. How is gold liquid at room temperature? We wear gold like as earrings, right? So gold is not liquid at room temperature. Second, which non-metal is solid? Okay, some of you have said bromine. No, bromine is the only non-metal which is liquid. So here the correct answer is iodine. Third, metals are usually present to the dash of the periodic table and non-metals to the dash. Yeah, metals are present to the left and non-metals are present to the right. Fourth, what are some of the most malleable metals? So we have two metals which are highly malleable. They are gold and silver. Fourth, no, fifth, yeah. The form of carbon which is a good conductor of electricity. Yeah, almost all of you said it's graphite. Sixth, which of the metals can be easily cut with a knife? So we have lithium, sodium and potassium. These can be cut easily with a knife. Seventh, metals which are poor conductors of heat. So lead is the right answer. So is mercury. So there are two right answers here, lead and mercury. Eighth, which of the following non-metals is lustrous? Which of these? Okay. Bromine is a liquid, fluorine is a gas, chlorine also is a gas. So we are only left with iodine. Iodine is the only non-metal which is lustrous. And even graphite has a luster. Ninth, dash are substances which can easily dash electrons to form dash. And it was a multiple choice question. So metals can easily lose electrons to form cations. So second option is right, which most of you have guessed. But there is another option that is right. Non-metals gain electrons to form anions. So there are two right answers here. Second one and the fourth one. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing these results. And Meghna is asking a question. Ma'am, what is the alloy of stainless steel? So, Meghna, stainless steel itself is an alloy. And to make stainless steel, we use several elements like iron, nickel, chromium, manganese. Stainless steel is an alloy which is made of these metals. Okay, fine. Now, let's move ahead. Let's study some more. Let me bore you some more. First is reaction of metals with air. So whenever metals react with air, what do we mean by air? Air may we have oxygen Oxygen helps in burning. Oxygen is a supporter of combustion. So metals, when they react with air, when they are burnt in air, it is the same as reacting them with oxygen. We get metallic oxide. Okay. When metals react with oxygen, we get metallic oxide. And let us see some examples now. Let's burn some copper. You know the color of copper? What is the color of copper? Okay, copper is copper color. I don't know how to describe that. But lustrous brown maybe. So when we are burning that copper, first of all, see the color of the flame. It's so nice, no? And after burning, we get black powder. Okay, so copper is a metal, its atomicity is 1. So we'll take only one copper atom. But it is reacting with oxygen. Oxygen is a diatomic gas. The atomicity of oxygen is 2. So we'll always write O2. We'll never write O here. So what are we getting? We will get cupric oxide. We'll get cupric oxide. So what is cupric ion? Cuprous was Cu1 plus and cupric is Cu2 plus. Okay, so cupric is Cu2 plus, oxide is O2 minus. So cupric oxide would be CuO. CuO. So this is the black powder that we are getting here. This is black in color and copper is reddish brown in color. Yeah. So I hope this is clear. So this is burning in oxygen to give a black color powder of cupric oxide. So cupric oxide is a metallic oxide. And Somil is asking about nascent oxygen. So Somil, when we talk about nascent oxygen, NaSCENT, in that case, we only take oxygen atoms. So we will be doing this when we study organic chemistry. I'll be talking about nascent oxygen there. But for now, just remember that whenever oxygen has to be written in a reaction, it should be O2 and not O. Another example. So we took some aluminium. This is aluminium here and we burn it. So aluminium burns with a very nice dazzling white flame just like magnesium. So when this is burning, we ultimately get a white color powder. Oh, did I forget to balance last reaction? Don't forget to balance. Don't be like me. So how do we balance it? Someone just unmute and tell me the balancing of this reaction.
Ma'am, we put 2 at copper and then we put a 2 in front of copper in right hand side.
Yeah, in front of cupric oxide. Yes. Now here, tell me the final reaction, final balanced reaction. I'll give you a minute and you can type your answers in the chat box or you can unmute and tell me the answer. Aluminium is burning in oxygen. What do we get?
Aluminium oxide.
I know that, but what is the reaction?
Al plus O2 equal to Al2O3.
Very good, Rishabh. Al, this is a metal, atomicity is 1. It reacts with O2 and it gives aluminium oxide. So what is aluminium oxide? Aluminium is Al3 plus. Oxide is O2 minus. So aluminium oxide would be Al2O3. Okay. So here we get Al2O3. But it is not balanced. This is a white powder. Yeah. Balance it and tell me the answer.
2Al2O3.
Okay.
Then 4Al on the left side or in the reaction side, and 3O2.
3O2. So is this clear to everyone? Balancing a reaction? Okay. And just keep in mind that we are going to talk in detail about this Al2O3. This is very important for us. Okay, so we'll come back to it in about 5 minutes. So, how are sodium and potassium stored? What do I mean by this question? You know, sodium and potassium, both of them are highly reactive. So, they react with oxygen to form their oxides, sodium oxide and potassium oxide. Sodium ion is Na plus, oxide ion is O2 minus. Okay, so this gives me Na2O. 2 comes here, 1 comes here. Similarly, potassium ion is K plus, oxide is 2 minus. So we get K2O. And these reactions are not balanced. Should I balance? Okay, I'll quickly balance. If I write 2 here, I'll have to write a 4 over here. I think this is balanced. And this one, same thing. 2, 4. Sodium and potassium, they are so reactive with air that they form sodium oxide and potassium oxide very soon. And this reaction is so vigorous that they catch fire. This reaction is very violent reaction. Okay, they catch fire. That is why instead of storing them in air, we do one thing, we store them in kerosene, because sodium and potassium do not react with kerosene. So sodium and potassium, when kept in air, react vigorously with oxygen. Vigorously means very violently. React vigorously with oxygen to form their oxides and catch fire. So what do we do? Therefore, they are stored under kerosene because they do not react with kerosene. Yes, again, exam questions. What is the most important condition for electricity? What is electricity? It is the flow of electrons, right? Electricity is the flow of electrons, right? So metals, they lose electrons very easily, right? So if they lose electrons easily, they are going to have a lot of free electrons. Free electrons are those electrons that can move freely in the metal. Okay, so whatever outermost shell electrons are there in metals, metal loses them easily and then they become free electrons. They start flowing in the entire surface of the metal. So that is why metals are good conductors. See, I'm just writing it. Metals lose electrons easily, which become free electrons. Which become free electrons. So these free electrons can move in the entire surface of the metal. So the motion of these electrons is easy. That is why metals are good conductors. That is why metals are good conductors of electricity, because they have a lot of free electrons. Good conductors of electricity. So is this point clear? Electricity is nothing but the directional flow of electrons, no? So metals can easily lose electrons. So it has a lot of free electrons. And if we provide some potential difference, these electrons will start flowing. I remember Walter had explained this in first class of physics. I was right here. Fine. So that is why metals are good conductors. But non-metals, they do not lose electrons easily. So non-metals are poor conductors of electricity. Okay. And then the second one, why is sodium kept under kerosene? So I think all of you know this answer now and you can answer it. Why are surfaces of metals cleaned with sandpaper before burning in air?
May I tell?
Yeah, Vedant, go ahead.
Metals are cleaned with sandpaper to reduce the amount of oxides of the metal present on their surface.
Yeah, very good, very good. So let me explain it with a small diagram. So suppose we have a metal block. So this metal block, we know that metals are very reactive with air, no? So what will happen? Whatever metallic atoms are present on its surface, these surface atoms, they are in contact with air, no? Since they are in contact with air, on the surface we will have a coating of the metal oxide. Suppose this was made of aluminium. Suppose this was a block of aluminium. So this aluminium, whatever aluminium atoms are present on the surface, they will react with oxygen in the air and they will form a coating of aluminium oxide. They'll form a coating of aluminium oxide. Now this coating will not react with oxygen, right? Once this coating is formed, then this coating will prevent the rest of the metal and the rest of the metal will not react with oxygen. So this coating actually protects the metal from further corrosion, from further reaction with oxygen. So whenever we have to burn a metal in air, first we will have to remove this aluminum oxide coating from it. Once we remove that coating, then only we will get the actual aluminum metal, which will burn in air. I had explained the same thing when I was talking about burning of magnesium ribbon in the first class. So, magnesium ribbon, before burning, we have to scratch it, clean it with some sandpaper, right? Because it has a coating of magnesium oxide. That magnesium oxide will not let the magnesium burn. So first we have to remove that coating so that the metal can burn in air. So I hope this point is clear. Whenever you're doing any reactions in school also, if school opens, you will always have to scratch it with sandpaper first. Yeah, Rishabh, very good. Soumya, very good. Now, give reason for the following. Yeah. See, this was asked in 2014. It was a 2-mark question. Yes, people, come on. What is the reason for this? Just think anything. So, Krish is saying because it's malleable. Even Rishabh is saying that. But then why don't we pack the food in gold? Gold is most malleable. Do we need malleability when packing food? And what if that aluminium reacts with our food and poisons our food then? So see, there's a very interesting reason here. Aluminium is a reactive metal. So if we directly pack our food with aluminium, then aluminium will react with food and food will become unfit for consumption. So what happens is that aluminium foil that we have at homes, it already has a layer of oxide on it because we know that aluminium will react with air. It will form aluminium oxide. Okay, so that aluminium oxide is unreactive. So that layer of that coating of aluminium oxide will not react with food. So when we are packing food with aluminium foil, that aluminium foil already has a coating of aluminium oxide in it because aluminium reacts with air. And that aluminium oxide is not reactive. It is not going to poison my food. Okay. So I'll just write it for clarity. Aluminium forms a coating of aluminium oxide on it. Okay. This coating does not react with food. Does not react with food. So it is used for packing food articles. So is this point clear? It has nothing to do with malleability or ductility. When we are packing our food with something, our most important criteria is that we should be safe, right? So this is the reason, because aluminium oxide doesn't react with food. Okay. Mostly metals do react with oxygen, but there are two metals which do not react with oxygen even at very high temperatures. Okay. Two metals do not react with oxygen. Do not react with oxygen even at very high temperatures. Even at very high temperatures. So what are those two metals? 1 and 2. First is gold. Okay. Second is silver. Gold and silver do not react with oxygen. So I think we can move ahead now. Again, a question from 2015. Tell me the answers one by one. You can give me the answers in the chat box. So the best conductor of heat is silver. If you remember this from the chapter of electricity, silver has the lowest resistivity. It is the best conductor of heat. B. It has a very low melting point. Which metal has a low melting point? Okay, most of you are saying it's gallium or even tungsten. So let me write gallium. Even cesium has a very low melting point. C. Does not react with oxygen even at high temperature. I just taught this. We have gold, we have silver. Is most ductile. So gold is the most ductile element. Yeah, I got so many answers. Thank you, people. Now let's see that metal oxide that we got. Like we got cupric oxide, we got aluminium oxide. Are they soluble in water or not? So mostly metal oxides are insoluble in water. Mostly metal oxides are insoluble in water. Oh, bloopers. Are insoluble in water. But oh, there are a few metal oxides which are highly soluble in water. So one of them is sodium oxide. So sodium oxide and potassium oxide are highly soluble in water, and they form a very interesting solution there. So can you tell me the reaction? Sodium oxide, when it dissolves in water, what is the reaction that takes place?
Na2O plus H2O equal to NaOH.
Always give me the balanced reactions.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, always. Otherwise, in exam also you will forget. So Na2O reacts with water to give What will it form? We have Na, we have O, we have H. It will form sodium hydroxide. So what is the formula of sodium hydroxide? Sodium hydroxide is, yeah, Rushi, very good. So Na is plus and hydroxide ion is OH minus. So sodium hydroxide would be NaOH. Yeah. And how do we balance it?
2 NaOH.
Yeah, 2 NaOH. Very good. And what are the states? So this sodium oxide, what is its state? Solid, liquid, gas? It is solid. Okay. Water is liquid. And then the sodium hydroxide that we get, it will be dissolved in this water. So anything dissolved in water is in aqueous state. Okay. Same thing we can do for potassium hydroxide. So potassium oxide reacts with water. We get potassium hydroxide. So this is solid, this is liquid, this is aqueous. This is potassium hydroxide. And the sodium hydroxide and potassium hydroxide, are they acids or bases?
Bases.
They are bases and they are actually soluble bases. And what do we call them? Soluble bases are known as?
Alkalis.
Alkali.
Very good, very good. So, when sodium oxide and potassium oxide dissolve in water, we get alkalis. We get soluble bases. So, this point is clear? Okay. So, let's move ahead. And here I have taken two things. This first thing, it looks like a ring, right? It's a very thin ribbon and it's a ribbon of magnesium. So this is magnesium ribbon. So this is what it looks like. And in your school, I think they will do this experiment. So magnesium burns with a dazzling white flame and the teacher will say, please students, do not look at the flame. It can harm your eyesight, but all of you will be looking at it with your eyes wide open. So yeah, you will do this experiment whenever school reopens. So this magnesium ribbon, and what is this? What is this yellow colored powder? This is sulfur. So pretty, no? This is actually sulfur powder. Okay. So we are going to do an experiment now. We will take this magnesium ribbon and we will burn it. Okay. Same thing we are going to do for sulfur. We'll take this sulfur powder and we'll burn it. So now let's see what will happen in this first case. What will happen when we burn magnesium ribbon in oxygen? So shall we write the reaction? What is happening? Magnesium reacts with magnesium reacts with oxygen and we are going to get metallic oxide. So magnesium oxide. Magnesium ion is Mg2 plus. Oxide ion is O2 minus. So magnesium oxide would be MgO. Okay. And same thing let's do for sulfur. So sulfur, it reacts with oxygen. What will we get here? What will we get when sulfur reacts with oxygen? We'll get sulfur dioxide, SO2. Same like carbon. Carbon also reacts with oxygen, we get carbon dioxide, no? So here we'll get sulfur dioxide. This reaction is not balanced, 2 and 2. Yeah. So this magnesium oxide that we get here is actually a white powder. Yeah, Bhumika, very good. You're right. So this is a white powder. Let's see. So we are seeing the first part now. We took magnesium ribbon and we are burning it. What we are getting is magnesium oxide, this white powder. Okay. Now let's do one thing. I'll take this powder and I'll mix it with some water. Okay, this is water over here. So what did I do? I took magnesium oxide and I mixed it with water. Okay, now that solution that I get now, I'm going to test it with a red litmus paper and with a blue litmus paper. So what am I going to observe? This is case A, this is case B. I take this solution now, magnesium oxide plus water, and I'm testing it with a red litmus paper. Interesting, no? You'll do this in school. I could have shown you, but I do not have magnesium ribbon. What will happen? Okay, Rishabh is saying that red litmus turns blue. And what about blue litmus? What happens to blue litmus? Yeah, blue litmus will remain blue. Nothing is going to happen to this blue litmus. So what do you think? What can you say about magnesium oxide? Is it an acidic oxide or is it a basic oxide?
Basic oxide.
Okay, Rishabh is saying that it's basic. What about others? What do you think? Is magnesium oxide a basic oxide or an acidic oxide?
Basic oxide.
Yeah, it is basic because it is turning red litmus to blue. So I can conclude here that magnesium oxide is a basic oxide. Okay, very good. Now let us not forget the second part. We had also burned sulfur, right? So let's see what happened over there. You see this yellow powder here, that is sulfur. And then we set it on fire. You see this blue thing, that is actually the blue flame. Sulfur burns with a very beautiful blue flame. Okay. So when it burns, the reaction happens like this. S plus O2 gives SO2. This SO2 is in the form of a gas. So what is this test tube doing here? Why is it ulta? Why is it inverted? What is this test tube doing here? This test tube is just collecting sulfur dioxide. Okay. Now, once we have collected the sulfur dioxide, I'll do one thing. I'll add some water to it. Okay. So I took this test tube and I put some water. I took some water from here and put into it. So what do I get? Now I have a mixture of SO2 and water. Okay. So now I will take this mixture and I'll do the same thing with red litmus paper. I'll test it and I'll test it with a blue litmus paper. What is going to happen? So here the opposite will happen. Here red remains red. Red remains red. Nothing happens to it. But this blue litmus paper turns to red. Blue turns to red. This is the difference. So what can I conclude from here? I can say that sulfur dioxide is an acidic oxide because it is turning blue litmus to red. So sulfur dioxide is an acidic oxide. Is that clear? SO2 is an acidic oxide and magnesium oxide is a basic oxide. This is very, very important for us. Let's do this question now. Chalo, all of you, answer this question. It's so fun to teach today because all of you are in a good interactive mood. We took sulfur and we are heating it. We are collecting the gas. So the gas that is being collected here is nothing but sulfur dioxide. Now, first part is what will be the action of this gas on dry litmus paper? So when we have a dry litmus paper, with dry litmus paper, SO2, although it is an acidic oxide, it will not behave like an acid, because you remember, for an acid to behave like an acid, we need water. Until and unless an acid is mixed with some water, it is not going to behave like an acid. So that is why with the dry litmus paper, there is going to be no change. It will not change color. But now, if I take moist litmus paper, if we have moist litmus paper, then this acidic oxide will behave like an acid. And what will it do? It turns blue litmus paper to red. Okay, only when it is moist. Now, part B. Write a balanced chemical equation. So, balanced chemical equation is simple. We take sulfur, we react it with oxygen, we get sulfur dioxide. But it's not yet complete. This is just the first part. Okay, we have to write another reaction. Why is this blue litmus paper changing to red? What is happening when we take some moisture? So when we have some water, this sulfur dioxide gas, it reacts with that water. Okay, this reacts with water and it gives me an acid, sulfurous acid, H2SO3. So this completes the answer. First is S plus O2 gives SO2. That is one reaction. Second is that SO2, it reacts with the water that is present in the moist litmus paper and it forms an acid. So because of this acid, litmus paper turns from blue to red. Yeah, very good. So fine. So I think this question is clear. So let me explain it in a more chemistry manner. Acid plus base gives salt plus water. We know this already. Whenever acid reacts with a base, we get salt and water. So here, this is known as neutralization reaction. Let me write on the turtle. Okay, let it be. Neutralization reaction. Okay, acid plus base gives salt and water. So whenever we talk about, say, magnesium oxide, we took magnesium oxide. Okay, when we react it with an acid, say HCl, what do we get here? It is a double displacement reaction. So what are the products going to be? Mg will come here, H will come here. So we get magnesium chloride. Magnesium is Mg2 plus. Chloride is Cl minus. Yeah, we get MgCl2. Okay. And along with it, we get some water. So people, do not forget the valencies. Don't just see there's only one Cl, so I'll just write MgCl. No. Whenever we are writing such reactions, we have to take the valencies of each element into account. So here, HCl is an acid. Okay. Plus something gives me MgCl2 is a salt. And this is water. So if I compare, suppose if I compare this A reaction with this B reaction, acid plus base gives salt plus water, acid plus dash gives salt plus water. What do you think? How should I fill up this blank?
Ma'am, it should be base.
Yeah, it should be base. So doesn't this indicate that magnesium oxide is actually a basic oxide? Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
magnesium oxide is a basic oxide because it reacts with an acid to give salt and water. Same thing we can do for the case of a non-metallic oxide also. Suppose we take carbon dioxide. Okay, we take carbon dioxide. Carbon is a non-metal. So this is a non-metallic oxide. So carbon dioxide, let us react it with a base. Say lime water. What is lime water? It was calcium hydroxide. Do you remember? This was a test for carbon dioxide where lime water is going to turn milky. So what do we get here when this reaction takes place?
Calcium carbonate.
Very good, Vatsal. We get calcium carbonate plus something else. What else do we get here?
Water.
Water.
Yeah, we get water. So what do we see here? We know calcium hydroxide is a base. So dash plus base gives salt. This is a salt. This is water. So if I try to fill up this blank, I have to write acid here. So doesn't this indicate that carbon dioxide is actually an acidic oxide? Okay, because it reacts with a base to give salt and water, just like neutralization reaction. So I hope this is clear. And you can explain this if asked in the exam. So let me write a general statement now that metallic oxides are basic oxides and non-metallic oxides are acidic oxides. So is that clear, Krish? Whenever you see a metallic oxide, it is going to be basic. Whenever you see a non-metallic oxide, it is going to be acidic. Fine?
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. And here, I think I can launch the next poll. So most of you have answered. I'll wait for 15 seconds, waiting for one more response. So first one, a solution of dash oxide in water turns dash litmus dash. So here there are two right answers here. First is a solution of a metallic oxide in water turns red litmus blue. That is correct. Another answer is a solution of a non-metallic oxide in water turns blue litmus red. So the correct answers are the first option and the last option. Second, sodium oxide and potassium oxide are insoluble in water. That is very false. They are highly soluble in water and they form alkalis. Third, metals which are stored in kerosene oil. So we have sodium and potassium. These are the two right answers. Lithium is not the answer here. Fourth, copper burns in air to form, where did it go? Black colored cupric oxide. So last option is right. Fifth one, choose the correct option about amphoteric oxides. Well, all of them are correct. So all three options are right here, but I'll talk about it in the next class.